5 p.m. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5, Section 551.041 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice was given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville would conduct a special meeting on Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 at 5 p.m. via WebEx teleconference meeting link that was provided at the City of Brownsville Agenda Center. The notice and meeting agenda were posted at the Brownsville Agenda Center. The members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting hosted through WebEx teleconference could join at the numbers provided on the agenda. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. So, Mayor, it is now 5:01, and you may call the meeting to order. We have a quorum.
All right, welcome everybody. I'll call the meeting to order and welcome everybody that's here. Mr. Cardenas, thanks for attending in person, and welcome everybody. So thanks. Let's get started.
Okay, is Pastor Brad Burks on here? I'm trying to see if I see him.
No, Pastor Brad said he would not be attending today, and there will be another pastor here who is doing the invocation in his place.
Okay.
Let me get the name.
I see Pastor Angel Gutierrez signed.
Yes, that's who it is. Pastor Angel, are you here?
He is, but he's on mute.
Pastor Gutierrez, you're on mute.
Can James unmute him?
Pastor, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us? He may be having technical difficulty on his end. Now he's unmuted.
Pastor, can you hear us?
I can see him. Pastor, we cannot hear you. Can you hear us?
I don't think he can. He's not reacting.
Okay. Well then, whenever he can catch up, let's go back to him. Let's go ahead and move on.
Okay, our next item, invitations. Update on the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation by Helen Ramirez, Executive Director.
Good evening. I don't think you can see me.
Can y'all put the,
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. We're going to go ahead and start a presentation. Next slide, please. As part of our 6-month board update, I wanted to give you a little update of what we've been doing in the last 6 months. Next slide, please. Some of the focus that we've had since January of 2021 is the air and space focus with new space companies. We're going to go over the development of the North Brownsville Industrial Park, the 72-acre park, Union Pacific focus site selection tool that we are now part of, the Skills Development Fund application process and what updates we have on those submittals, the engagement with our wonderful industry partners here in Brownsville, Greater Brownsville, and Cameron County, our tech colleges and our community, and really the RGV, and also our Careers and Coffee event, and just kind of quick update on that we hosted on June 28th in collaboration with the City of Brownsville, TSC, UTRGV, and industry partners as well. Next slide. As you know, we've had recent announcements with regards to commercial space. Space Channel has operations here in the city of Brownsville. They reach 30 million households, I believe, with their recent acquisition of Plex app and TCL channel. They're actually increasing their reach to possibly 52 million people. They have recently they are also engaging with other space partners such as Space Ventures, which is that investment fintech company that the GPIC incentivized along with the city. Space Channel has also been able to interview and place on their channel Space Ventures, City of Brownsville events, and as well as the next company. Next slide, please. Paragon, VTOL Aerospace. Thank you, commissioners, for attending that event. I know that Commissioner De Los Santos was there as well. They're focused on reducing really air traffic through low-flying aircraft services, drone services, and cargo drone services. So that's one of the companies that we, out of 53 cities, were chosen as a city for a manufacturing hub. Next slide. Regarding the North Brownsville Industrial Park, what's recent news is that the 550, SH 550 has been designated an Interstate 169. I think that's great for our proximity to the North Brownsville Industrial Park and our other park. One of the first companies is Excel Bobbins and Plastic. This week, we are also closing on a second property, and a second company will be occupying the business park. So it's really nice to see the park getting going. We are also working on landscaping improvements to the entrance, and other improvements that need to be made on the park now that it's being occupied with tenants. Next slide. As you can see, if you were to go on the unionpacific.com website, this is a great tool nationwide for possible companies and master planners to look at industrial sites. What's unique about our site is that it is large, right? So it's over, it's 729 acres, and that's really it's almost a mega site in terms of when you get into 500 acres and above, it's very important to, there's not that many sites, available nationwide when you get to that size. So I think being on the Union Pacific Railroad focused site solution is a great tool with regard to when people do nationwide searches, what are they looking for in Texas and the proximity of rail to it, where it's flanked by rail. Next slide. And the Skills Development Fund, we've been working very diligently with Texas Workforce Commission, Workforce Solutions of Cameron, and Texas Southmost College. We have 5 active applications. 3 were submitted last week. By July 15th, we met that deadline. Many of the GPIC did write letters of support for these businesses and were provided reference and really just took them, worked hand in hand to get these applications done. They're accepted on a rolling basis. So while we submitted 3, we are actually actively working on another 2. So very excited about bringing those resources that Workforce has to our companies here in and around Brownsville. Next slide. And also when we talk about international, Matamoros and Rio Bravo, just connecting with our, binational partners here in the Valley, I think it's very important. It is an add value to many of the companies that look to locate here. And so just forging those relationships in manufacturing, in tourism, and different sectors, I think is very important. So we're really using that push. If you look on the right, we visited Core Molding Technologies, and the chief founder and visionary officer of Dwight was Athano Smith, went actually to visit the maquiladora there and the industry there to see their capabilities. So we can see that, that really makes us a very attractive area to do business at. Next slide. And also just connecting industry partners. I mean, having them get to know one another. TSC hosted at iTech a tour of all their welding, all the wonderful programs that they host. And I think that was a great way of just bringing our industry partners to the tech colleges and having them understand the technologies. Companies like Steel Coast now is forging relationships with them and other businesses as well. So it's a great way for them to get to know each other, what industries are complementary to one another, and to see how everybody's doing business here in Brownsville and how they're doing. Next slide. And, I think it's important because as we look at engaging with the community and engaging with our businesses, I think the numbers speak for themselves. In 2020, just the Facebook or Instagram trends were at 352, and now they're at 14,846. So the engagement of what we're doing, what we're all doing, I think it's important. In April, we had many of our wins with regard to companies. The slide does not even take into consideration Careers in Coffee, where we had 1,800 registrants, and the engagement that we're still having with that event. Next slide. And with that, Careers in Coffee, a 12-hour event hosted in collaboration with the City of Brownsville at the Event Center. 1,800 attendees. I know just talking to Steel Coast, they probably had 600 interviews and are hiring many of those people. Right now we're working on a survey with regard to, how was their experience and what is the outcome of many of these interviews that were made that day. But I think it was just a great community event. I think Laredo's hosting one, and other cities are now hosting them. So it's good to see that. We do hope to have another one in the fall because we've received so much good response, not only from the community, but from other companies in Brownsville that want to participate in the next event. So with that, next slide. If there's any questions, I just wanted to give you an update of what we've been accomplishing and doing the past 6 months, and very excited about what's to come and additional businesses that we see interested in Brownsville.
Great job, Helen. I think we've all noticed positive changes out there at GBIC. And, I've been involved in some of these meetings, and it's just great to see the interest, especially among the space and aerospace industry. We certainly have a lot of interest now. It's just a matter of, closing some of these prospects. But yeah, I think you've done a good job kind of getting everything focused and moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions or comments? All right, thank you.
We'll move on to our public comment period. We had 2 public comment forms received, but they were from the same person. And so it is from Victor Deonda. Victor, are you present? I don't see him on my screen, but I may not be able to see everybody in attendance. Victor Deonda?
I don't see that there's a Victor Leanda signed in under participants, so
Okay.
I guess we can go ahead and.
Okay.
His comment, though, he did leave he did fill out a form. So we know some of the issues or concerns that he had.
Yes, sir.
Same goes for Dr. Hinojosa as well.
The next item is work session. And item 1 is fiscal year 2022 budget presentation number 2.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. How are you? Today we'll present the second workshop. We're now deeper into the budget for the next fiscal year. Joining me will be Elizabeth Walker, Assistant City Manager. We also have the finance team behind us to support with any questions. Next slide. One moment as we figure out the PowerPoint here. There we go. So this is a table of contents. We'll quickly recap the budget theme and then start going down the fiscal responsibility side of what was presented last meeting. We'll introduce the infrastructure maintenance fund, talk a bit more about that, and then we'll talk about the capital improvement plan and capital outlay. Next slide. Here's the theme, striking a balance. Today, we'll be focusing on the left side of the scale, which is where we have more of the fiscal responsibility items. Next slide. This is the key slide for the fiscal responsibility. What this represents is the needs that we have. Actually, the 12.4 is less. There was a typo there. That number is 6.4. But what we had to do is back out the CIP. What this shows is our needs, our deferred needs. From Fair Streets, that number is from our PCI that was completed last year, the payment condition index. Our capital outlay is items that we don't want to be using debt for, that have a useful life of less than 10 years and are typically under $100,000. Heavy equipment, that is the total number, but we've already have a lot of that in our capital improvement plan, which Elizabeth will cover. The balance is around 6.4 million, and then technology, we have 1.1 million. So what we're showing here is the total need. The Fair Streets in particular are those streets that we would want to fund on an ongoing basis through our street maintenance program. That is the category of streets that we can then extend the life and avoid them falling into the poor category where they have to be reconstructed, which is the most expensive category or type of improvement that typically requires then debt funding. So that's why we have that here, because whenever we can supplement our streets maintenance program, we want to do more mill and overlay of Fair Streets. So in total, this number is really just over 100 million, closer to $103 million of total needs. So this was our go-to list when we looked at how to allocate some of the surplus funding. The other blue items represent things that we need to address as well, but that we don't have a number for. So we have a facilities assessment being performed that should be ready by January, hopefully. Sidewalks by August, the sidewalk master plan. Alleys and trails, we haven't really sized up our full need for ongoing maintenance there. Next slide. Here's the proposal. So what we are proposing is programming for $16.8 million. What that includes is what we talked about last meeting, which was the surplus projected for fiscal year 2021 of 5.6 million. We're also already projecting the PUB transfer that would come in at $10 million around the end of the year. That is a number we're aware would be due to the city unless the city would defer, but based on need, we're going to project it here for deferred maintenance items. And then also we're projecting out the amount of sales tax that we would anticipate having through the end of the year at a conservative 5%. So that's what gives us a 16.8. If you look at the dark blue items, I'll start on the left side from the bottom up. We have the introduction of the infrastructure maintenance fund. I'll talk more about what that is. That'll be an ongoing source of us funding our maintenance. We currently have that facility assessment in progress. What we would propose is to seed fund that facility plan with $4 million. We're anticipating that we're going to have some priority needs. We already have fire station number 1 that's going to need some work. So whatever other things come up out of that assessment, we want to be positioned to tackle some of that pretty quickly. In addition, we would propose to supplement and get closer to finalizing the traffic synchronization project. We would recommend adding 1.4 million there. And then also the sidewalk plan, so that should conclude in August. We want to be positioned to seed fund that plan. We want to have a recurring funding source, but if we dedicate 500,000, that would give us a good amount of money to use toward beginning to address some of those recommendations from the sidewalk master plan. Heavy equipment, I mentioned how that was around 12.7 in total. We've already recognized a lot of that in our CIP, but we would propose to accelerate some of our heavy equipment needs. Within that 4.1, we have street maintenance equipment that needs to be replaced that is upwards of 20 years old. So if we're going to do more Fair Streets, we need to make sure that our equipment is up to speed there. And a lot of our mill and overlay for Fair Streets work is in-house. So we have staffing and we have equipment that we need to replace, or not replace staffing, but equipment. So we would recommend accelerating that. Capital outlay is that other item we had about 6.6 million. We were recommending, we have a $400,000 annual cash funded amount toward this. We recommend accelerating 3 years and then us continuing with that list, which is basically the year 2025 that we would now be able to fund in 2022. Elizabeth will cover a bit more on that. Fair Streets, we would recommend putting $1 million to more mill and overlay. The question might ask, why more equipment versus Fair Streets? The equipment comes first. Once we replace the equipment in future years, we'll be able to supplement more and more of the Fair Streets work. We would also recommend $1 million toward technology replacement. And then the fleet replacement program that we currently have for light to medium fleet, that is a 10-year plan. However, what was not included in that plan was the PD cruisers. The reason for that was that we're working with enterprise fleet management. At the time, they were not funding emergency vehicles for leasing. So now they do allow that. So we want to begin to include those cruisers into our fleet replacement program. And that 500,000 would help us begin to replace those. And then we have one-time items. One-time items are one-time projects that are non-recurring. You all may know, and you hear from the community on the need for more bus stops. We have a study from 2017 that recognizes that the national standard is around 20 to 30% of bus stops have a shelter. We are going to finalize our locations for where we have the most high traffic shelters that would put us in that range. That would be around 25 shelters. If we were to be able to do all 25, that would be 1.1 million. Our recommendation would be to do them all at one time. We currently have 7 in progress, but those are funded through federal grants and are only for District 1. These would be equitably distributed across all districts. So it would be a major impact to the community to add more bus stops. The Historic Preservation Program in 2021, we set aside $250,000 of CDBG money for historic preservation. A good case in point is there were some small homes on Madison, I think it was, that were being replaced, or Jackson. So on Jackson, those were being supported through that $250,000. We would recommend doubling that to have more resources to continue historic preservation and redevelopment of projects in downtown. The Games of Texas is scheduled for 2023 and 2024 here in Brownsville. We will have to do some preparation work and outfit our Brownsville Sports Park and other facilities to support that. The estimated total is around $800,000 to prepare. We're hoping to partner with BCIC for $300,000. And because we have the surplus funding here, we would recommend already making that investment for $500,000 to be prepared for the Games of Texas. The annualized economic impact is $8 million a year. So that would be $16 million over 2 years by investing $800,000. So the ROI is certainly there for that. The Samano project was recently approved for redevelopment, but the funding source was CDBG funding. CDBG funding can be a bit more cumbersome to work with. We would propose to swap the funding from CDBG to general fund to facilitate that transaction for CDCB. And then the $500,000 from CDBG, we would move over to street work. And then finally, I can't barely see. What was that? Airport. Excuse me. The final one is airport. So the airport expansion is something that is in the plans for the long term. There is an airport master plan that was completed. FAA requires that the city fund what's called a, what does it say? Remind me.
Airport runway rehab.
Airport runway
BCA.
plan. So there has to be a cost benefit plan completed even before the city requests funding. And that has to be done through local funds, and that can then be considered in kind. So we would recommend to at least get that study going to position us to then continue the planning and ultimately bringing down funds that would support the airport expansion, which is an economic driver for the city. In total, we would suggest our recommendation would be $14 million of deferred maintenance, and then the balance of 2.8 would be for one-time non-recurring projects presented. After this, we will send you an email tomorrow and we'll provide you the lists with the detail of a lot of this information, all this information. Next slide, please. The way we approach how we made these recommendations, I say we, because we did have 4 meetings with our directors. We broke up into small groups. They were able to chime in on different projects for use within the surplus funds. We focused on your strategic vision. That is one criteria we want to continually work toward. We also are using the surplus funding policy statement that's in our 5-year plan. So one-time money for one-time projects. We were very participatory. We were open about what our needs are and how we best implement those for the benefit of the organization. Since we have this available funding, our recommendation would be to accelerate our deferred needs and ultimately focus on what would give the best impact to the community. Next slide. Obviously, there's still items that will be needed. So the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund is being introduced and recommended this year. The reason for that is we need to have a dedicated source for continuing to fund our maintenance needs. This is a perpetual need, but specifically we want to make sure that our deferred maintenance needs are being addressed as soon as we can. That would be the idea behind the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund, a way to dedicate funding for that purpose. The source funding would be our enterprise funding that we have capped over the last 2 fiscal years. That is landfill, PUB, and the bridge funding. Since that's not going to waterfall into our fund balance, since we've met the 90 days and it can be used for recurring expenses, we would instead move those funds to our Infrastructure Maintenance Fund to continue chipping away at that list of items that were presented in the prior slide. Next slide. Here's a breakdown of some items. Those blue points that were shared. Alleys is something that we hear about that need to be replaced. Some of them are already paved. We don't have a program in place now, so some of the IMF funding would qualify for alley work on a programmatic basis. Sidewalks will have the master plan complete. We want to make sure we have also funding dedicated toward that. Trails, same thing. We want to focus on maintenance. And then our facilities. Those will need recurring maintenance, and all of that could be packaged into one fund that we continually source and have in place to help ensure that that we have sustainability in our public infrastructure. The Sustainable Energy as a Service is just another reminder of us proposing to consider that once we're near the assessment for our facilities. And then Elizabeth will present the remaining part of the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Last year, we presented to you the Capital Improvement Plan. This was our inaugural document, which sought to outline the next 5 years of various capital improvement projects, identifying their funding source, and attaching those to their life expectancy. What we had last year was $10 million in new capacity that was carved out by virtue of refinancing existing certificates of obligation. Our focus last year, given that it was limited to $10 million, was to fix what was broken and finish what was started, to assign urgency to those projects in particular. That is not necessarily textbook. But for a capital improvement program would be fixed assets, new and significant improvements to existing fixed assets, infrastructure improvements, and again, you align the payback period with the useful life of the asset. Next slide, please. $1 million last year to fix what was broken and finish what was started. We identified much that was broken. And much that is broken is better suited for an infrastructure maintenance fund as it is that the city manager has just introduced. And so with the introduction of that fund for this year, it allowed us to revisit the scheduled capital improvement plan over the next 4 years. And in revisiting it, we identified about $2.2 million of capital projects that were included in the capital improvement plan that are better suited for the IMF instead. The $2.2 million is primarily in the outlying years and with a kind of a nominal impact proposed in fiscal year 2022. But you can see the various project categories that are funded over the next 5 years: heavy equipment, streets and drainage, technology, and facilities improvement. Next slide. What then would be on deck for fiscal year 2022? You can see the list there. regarding facilities, heavy equipment, public safety, streets and drainage, and again, technology. Improvement program, we also have, as the city manager mentioned, a capital outlay program. This would be the third year of our capital outlay program, which we fund as a pay-go system using our bridge surplus revenues. What we are proposing for this year is to accelerate our capital allocation through our 2025 needs, essentially to buy outright the next 3 years of the planned capital outlay acquisition. The criteria for capital outlay are simply to assert inter-period equity, which is a government accounting term regarding financial reporting. Typically, the assets are valued at less than $100,000 and the operating life is less than 10 years. And so here you can see illustrated the capital outlay program as presented last year to indicate years 22, 23, and 24 to be financed through the surplus funding, which would then allow us to slide up what had been planned over the next 10 years to then assume 2025's planned capital outlay purchases in 2022.
And this is a reminder of the key dates. The next budget workshop is scheduled for August the 3rd. I would remind the commission that the purpose of the work sessions and the workshops are to be interactive. You can ask us questions now or email us because we are beginning to present more information and we'll send you a follow-up email to this. But basically the next version of our workshop will cover our recurring items. So that'll be on August the 3rd. And beyond that, the rest are basically approval dates for meeting statutory requirements from the state. And at this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Hi, Mr. Brunel, Ms. Walker. On the capital improvement plan for this year, FY22, I did see it was front loaded and there was a mention of 21 million for something. I couldn't tell what that was. Can you kind of go into a little bit more detail on that, please?
Yes, sir. I believe that is the contribution to the airport project. However, that's the total value of the project. The local contribution, I believe, is less than 10%.
Okay, yeah, because I hadn't seen that before, so and I think it was initial RNW, so it makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Yes, Mayor. We do account for the airport project as in the CIP, which is part of what it is that then allows for the CIP to be a total value proposed of $86 million. However, that $10 million is what is being programmed through the new debt capacity.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns about what they saw in this presentation?
I have a question.
Sure.
On the surplus funding that you're proposing, there's a category for fair streets. Can you explain what that exactly means?
Sure. If we can go back to that slide. So that's a great question, Commissioner. We had the pavement condition index performed in 2020. That was around 7 years from when we last had one performed. That will give us the condition of our street network and then help us identify the best maintenance solution or program for the condition of the street. The fair streets category, so there's good, fair, and poor. And the fair streets are those streets whose life can still be extended through a mill and overlay program, which basically gives the street around 7 to 10 years more of life. And what that does is it allows the street life to be recycled, basically, right? Replenished to the point where it doesn't degrade into what's called a poor category, where the street is now in a position where even the base structure is gone. At that point, the only street maintenance program is a full reconstruction, which is the most expensive form of maintenance and that typically requires debt. So by funding our maintenance program appropriately and on time while the streets are in fair category, that it gives us the ability to not get to that point, and it gives us a 10-to-1 ROI by just fixing the fair streets over and over as they go from good to fair over time.
And building on that, go ahead, Rose.
Just to confirm, when you do, whose department will it be when you do that overlay or repair as you're describing? to take into consideration or take a pause to decide whether that particular street could be converted into a complete street at that time?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So typically what will happen is when we go into a full reconstruction, that's when Public Works would consider the upgrade. The mill and overlay is less invasive, and it's just removing the top layer. It's pretty easy and quick. So if they're going to do a full reconstruction, they will absolutely consider the complete street conversion. Typically for a mill and overlay, it's just keeping that street at its current condition, but just extending the life of the street.
And I understand that, but a complete street could be as simple as a stripe on the road, not an extra
Sure,
piece.
sure. Yes. I'm speaking of curb to curb, sidewalks and everything. But yes, we do striping and all that.
And that falls under the Public Works Department?
Yes, that's correct.
The striping.
Correct.
Because oftentimes I've noticed, and maybe this is just the past, that there's often a delay between the mill overlay of a street and then them going back to replace maybe an existing striping pattern. And it was always seemed to be juggled between two different departments. So I'm asking for that reason.
Right. And that's also part of why those functions were combined a couple of years ago to address a lot of that coordination.
Thank you.
And Noel, it seemed like on the slide just prior to this one, the needs for fair streets was around 90 million, but it looks like we're only going to put 1 million towards that. Am I reading that correctly?
That is correct. And the reason, go ahead. The reason for that, go ahead.
Do we expect to be able to keep up if we're at 90 million need right now and only putting 1 million towards it next year? How are we going to keep up with those roads over even if they've got 6 or 7 years left? That doesn't seem like we're on track to stay ahead of that problem.
That's the dilemma, right? So the street maintenance program that we would need to have, our network of streets is around 2.3 billion at 1% maintenance. We're talking about $23 million a year. So yes, that number for maintenance should be a lot higher. In 2020, we created a streets and drainage fund because the city does have a street fee on the utility bill. What that generates is around 3.8 million. So our street maintenance program is the street fee plus general fund transfers in around 700,000. That's our street program. So yes, to your point, we should seek to accelerate and augment our street maintenance on a recurring basis, but therein lies the challenge. When we get to the next workshop, we'll show you how much revenue is available for new recurring costs for this new fiscal year. And historically, there hasn't been enough discretionary revenue to allocate for our maintenance plans as we've needed, as we should, by the book, so to speak.
And Commissioner, if you look at it, I mean, we're in a position now where we see a lot of deferred maintenance. And the big reason for that is just, prior years where there was no plans in place, where there's no real management or no focus on setting money aside to tackle this issue. We're going to see a similar issue later, right? But I mean, I think taking the approach to at least put some money aside, leverage some of our monies to bring in more for capital improvements, which I think we freed up, Noel, correct me if I'm wrong, but about 30 million through our debt restructuring, where we actually got 30 million to address CIP. But otherwise, I mean, had there not been this planning or foresight in place, we'd still be in a huge deferred maintenance hole. And we're digging ourselves out, but it's not something, based on the numbers and some of the issues we see, it's not something we're going to be able probably to tackle during our terms. But it is something that we're at least addressing and trying to get out ahead of.
That's correct. The mayor, 4 months into his tenure, joined us in Dallas when we presented to rating agencies about our intent to restructure our debt portfolio. And we took advantage of low interest rates. We also changed our approach. We now align debt with the fiscal life, with the life of the asset, which at times is 20 years, sometimes 30 years. Whereas before, everything was funded on an accelerated schedule of 15 years. That put a lot of pressure on our tax rate, and it didn't allow us to, and we were going to have a major drop off. So we instead leveled it off, created capacity to fund over the next few years. But the issue really is that, right? We have an infrastructure maintenance need. Many cities are facing the same issue. And the question is addressing that through economic development and growth of our tax base. Also, if we were to, I mean, we could easily sink $16.8 million toward that $90 million, and then nothing else gets done but streets. And our intent is to diversify the impact. Ultimately, the $4 million of heavy equipment goes a long way towards street maintenance. And then we can continue to focus on augmenting fair streets as we can.
Very good. And also on, excuse me, the bus shelters. I know you mentioned what the average is that other cities are doing and how many of their bus stops have shelters. I'm not a big fan of just what is everybody else doing. I'm more concerned with, are they meeting the needs of their citizens? And that would be the same thing here. You know, I don't know what the ratio of bus stops in residential versus commercial and retail areas or work areas are in other cities compared to Brownsville. And then there's also the climate aspect. We're at the southernmost part of the country. This is a much hotter area than other cities that may not need shelters. So I'd like us to look at it more from that perspective rather than other cities average this number, so that's what we're striving for. That's not good enough for me.
Sure, and that's a great point. The thing about our transportation system is that it wasn't necessarily a priority. Other than Sunday service, that's the first major investment in about 20 years. I think there was a reduction in service sometime in 2015. So what we're doing here is we're taking more of a local funding approach versus just relying on federal funds. If we rely on federal funds, it might take a longer time to do any justice to the bus shelters. What we're saying here is that we would approach this by doing more locally to address the issue of bus shelter. That's a benchmark of what the national average of street transit agencies is. We can always set the bar. I agree. This is a start because in the past, we just weren't as committed to addressing that issue. But yes, absolutely. We'll look at not just meeting, but looking to exceed that as funding allows.
And I appreciate that approach of doing more locally. I think that's a great way to start.
And Commissioner, to follow up on your point, I'm 100% in favor of more shelters as well. It's an issue that comes up quite a bit. And I've been pushing for this. And in the 25 that we're addressing, or actually the 25 that came up in our study, there's going to be, I believe, 7 or 8 that are coming up in District 1 through some CDBG funding. And then these 25 were kind of on the back burner. I did ask for these to be prioritized, which is the 25 that we addressed. So these are the 25 that have actually been identified through our studies as the ones that are most needed. I have asked for that study, and I would renew my request for that study, and I'd ask that Commissioner De Los Santos get a copy as well.
Yes, Mayor, it's being worked out. The study had the number, it did not have the location. So by August, B Metro will have not just the number, but the locations, and we'll send that out to you all. So within this fiscal year, you'll know in the next month or so where those locations are proposed.
Thank you.
So I have a question about bus shelters, which I'm so glad to hear that you're putting the local spin on it and the concept of doing them all at once, because it is obviously a very needed thing and has been for a long time. Have we looked at the design of the bus shelters? Not, as Commissioner De Los Santos pointed out, we are in a very hot place, and I've often wondered, do we really have the best design for our environment? Should it be shaped differently? Should it? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm wondering if we should look at that while we're at it before we buy them or build them or whatever we intend to do.
Yeah. Yes. So our staff will look at that. The current prototype, I think it sounds to be a little bit high. It's around 44,000 per stop. And I know Joel mentioned that they're going to look at that. So we're not committed to what we currently have. We're going to look at, since we're going to make such a big investment, we'll look at what is the most cost-effective way, and then certainly consider the design elements in the process. So we can make sure that not just the locations, but that the design is also brought to you all for you all to help us in that selection.
But Mr. Bernal, this is something that's an urgent need, and we've known this for years. So I really want to prioritize this and accelerate this as much as possible. Please.
Yeah, we can do all the pre-work. If this gets approved as proposed, we'll tee it up and have most of this queued up to take off when the fiscal year starts October 1. Okay, that's all we have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Our next item is consent agenda items. and we have one consent agenda item.
Looking for a motion?
I have a correction, and it's really just more grammatical it might be, but I noticed in some places on my name, the L is capitalized, in other places it is not. I just, for consistency's sake, I do not capitalize the L. And with that, I'll move to approve as corrected.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner De Los Santos as requested
Second.
with the edits in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Commissioner, if it makes you feel any better, when I first came on as mayor, they used the version of my name like 3 different ways. And I asked about a year ago for it to be consistent. Still isn't, so I kind of gave up. So I wouldn't really worry too much about the capital L or lowercase l. It's going to keep happening.
Good to know. Thank you, Mayor.
That's the thing. The former mayor used to call me Jessica Trudeau instead of Tetro.
Our next item is public hearings. Item 1, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2021-1688, approving a negotiated resolution between the City of Brownsville and Texas Gas Services regarding the company's April 29th, 2021 cost of service adjustment filing, declaring existing rates to be unreasonable, adopting new tariffs that reflect rate adjustment consistent with the negotiated settlement, and finding the rates to be set by the attached tariffs to be just and reasonable, providing for the recovery of the city's and TGS's reasonable and necessary rate case expenses, adopting a savings clause, determining that this ordinance was passed in accordance with the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act, declaring an effective date, repealing any prior ordinances inconsistent with this ordinance, and requiring delivery of this ordinance to the companies and the city's legal counsel, City Manager's Office.
Good evening again. I'm Elizabeth Walker in the Office of the City Manager. And tonight we will walk through the COSA filing as negotiated with Texas Gas Service. If this feels familiar, it's precisely the 3rd consecutive summer that I have presented to you a COSA filing. We do this with both Texas Gas Service as well as AEP. And I do expect to come back to you next month, likely, with something similar but separate on behalf of AEP. We do this because in 2017, Texas Gas Service and various cities in their service area, which kind of formed a cooperative together, entered into a cost of service agreement, which then compels them to bring back to this cooperative group anytime that they seek to impose a rate increase on their subscribers. In April of this year, they submitted such a request for a rate increase. The Cooperative of Effective Cities, through its consultant, negotiated those rates. Next slide, please. That consultant, Lloyd Gosling, which is out of Austin, reviewed the COSA filing, found it is consistent with the original agreement in 2017, but negotiated a reduction of $780,364 off of their proposed system-wide rate increase. Next slide, please. How this will affect each of the subscribers to Texas Gas Service. Residential accounts will have an impact of about $2.96 per month. Commercial accounts will receive an increase of about $27.27 per month. Next slide. We present this to you in the form of an ordinance as required through that settlement agreement. The consultant is reimbursed through Texas Gas Service. We would recommend approval of the proposed rates as negotiated. Next slide. This is an ordinance that is a public hearing.
Is there any additional presentation, Elizabeth, or is that it? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, do I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
We have a motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, do we have a motion on the item?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Items for individual consideration. Item 1, consideration and action to approve the City of Brownsville's 5-year consolidated plan for 2021 through 2025 and related documents. Resolution number 2021-00055 and the allocation of the Community Development Block Grant Home Investment Partnerships Program and Emergency Solutions Grant funding for the 2021-2022 one-year action plan, City Manager's Office, OSI.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Marina Solesi with the City Manager's Office. This item before you is the 5-year consolidated plan process, which is required for our HUD programs. It is also the first year of this plan for the 2021-2022 allocation. With us tonight, joining us is our partner, Ms. Jennifer Alfa, who's with TDA, and she's been helping us through this process. She's joining us virtually. This is a regional plan that we've been working with Harlingen as well as San Benito. So with that, Ms. Jennifer will be presenting. Thank you.
Thank you all. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here, be able to talk to you about our process for developing the consolidated plan and the annual action plan. You can go to the next slide. I'm going to overview the allocations that the city receives, as well as the planning documents that we assisted in creating. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the community outreach process that we led to solicit feedback from residents. And then I'm going to talk to you about the consolidated plan priorities, goals, and the annual action plan activities for this upcoming year and how those were selected. And then at the end, if there are any questions, we can take those questions. Next slide. So the funds we're talking about here are the funds that the city receives from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. These funds are provided to do affordable housing development, rehabilitation, also perform other community development activities. These funds are allocated on a formula basis, so they stay pretty consistent from year to year, but they do change over time because it is a formula and it's based on whatever Congress has allocated for that given year. The city currently receives HUD funds through 3 separate programs: the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. So CDBG, Home, and ESG for short. And you can see there, those are the allocation amounts for this 2021 year, and those will fluctuate over time. It's interesting, this slide, you can't see what these columns are for, but the first column is a summary of what the CDBG program can fund. CDBG can fund community development activities. It's probably the broadest of these 3 categories of programs. Primarily, you're benefiting low and moderate income persons or areas. It helps to aid in the prevention of slums and blight, or eliminate slums and blight. It helps to fund public services, public infrastructure. You can also use it to meet urgent needs. The next category in the middle there is the home program. And the home program is what it might sound like. It's for housing. You can provide decent, affordable housing, either through new construction or rehabilitation for lower income residents. It helps to expand the capacity of nonprofit housing developers as well. And then your final category here is for the ESG program, and this really focuses on homelessness. So street outreach, emergency shelters, rapid rehousing, things like that. Next slide. So we were engaged to assist the city in completing 3 different major planning documents that HUD requires as part of their allocation. The first year is the first report is the consolidated plan. So this, you can really think of this plan as a 5-year strategic plan that will guide the city's use of those HUD dollars that it receives annually over the course of these 5 years to meet goals that have been set out based on the data that we've collected and the community outreach that we've done. So that's your consolidated plan. It's a 5-year plan. The next plan that we worked on is the annual action plan. Now this, as it says, is annual. This happens every year, but when you do it in conjunction with the consolidated plan process, this annual action plan is really that first year of the 5 years. And so we're working on this first year of this next 5-year cycle right now. And then finally, related but separate is the analysis of impediments to fair housing. This is another HUD planning document that's required, and most jurisdictions do it in conjunction with their con plan and their annual action plan, just because it requires a lot of the same types of thinking and community outreach. Next slide. So the community outreach, I've mentioned this several times. This is a really important part of the process. We collect a lot of data when we do these plans, and data is really helpful because it gives us hard facts that we can kind of hang our hats on. But where we really get the best feedback and the best idea about what the community needs is from the community. And so we do a 3-part community engagement strategy. The first part is that we work with stakeholders, and we conduct interviews with experts on the areas that are funded under these 3 programs to get a sense of what they're seeing on the ground. We also do a community needs survey. This is an online survey. It was available in English and Spanish. And through that survey process, we actually received 161 survey responses. And that's honestly pretty good for this type of survey. It's very hard to get people to respond. So I was pretty pleased with this response. And then finally, we did focus groups. And as Marina mentioned, we did this process in conjunction with San Benito and Harlingen. And so we did take a regional approach, coordinated a lot of our efforts together. And so these first 3 focus groups you see listed here, the housing and infrastructure, facilities, public services, economic development, we did in conjunction with those other 2 cities. And we kind of focused those discussions around those areas, but then each city had their own individual resident focus group. And so we had a total of 4 focus groups. So that was our 3-prong approach to our community outreach. Next slide. Through that community outreach process, the consolidated plan requires you to establish priority needs. And so you look at the data, you listen to what folks are telling you, and then you come up with a list of priority needs. And as you can see here, we have a long list of priority needs. And I'll let you kind of read through those, but they range from housing and rehabilitation, home buyer assistance, housing development, home repair, and then into community and public facilities, and then onto services. You see a long list of services there. And when we get to the annual action plan and we talk about the different activities that are being funded this year, you'll see how the priority needs really relate to the kind of choices you make when you're making your funding decisions. So next slide. So from those priority needs that we've identified, we take all those needs and we roll them up into some overall goals. And these are the goals that are really going to guide the funding choices over the next 5 years. So you set out these goals in your 5-year plan, and then each year you decide how many of these goals, which of the goals you're going to pursue for that given year. And as you can see, we have 4 main consolidated plan goals. The first is to increase affordable housing opportunities and preservation. The second is to improve public infrastructure and public facilities. The third is to enhance services for low income and special needs populations. And then the 4th is to provide homelessness prevention services and housing assistance. So 4 big buckets of goals, and then you carry them out through your individual annual action plan. So next slide. Oh goodness, you can't see this slide at all. I wonder why. Are you guys able to see the graphic? Is it just me? Oh, you are.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, we are.
I can see the slide, but I can't see the body of it.
We can cover this.
yeah. I mean, I remember all the slides, but jump in if I'm missing something. So the annual action plan process requires you, as I said, to look at your goals from your consolidated plan and then carry them out in that given year. And an important note here is that you don't have to carry out every single goal every year. You can make a choice from year to year which goals you actually want to focus on. So on some years, if you have really large capital improvement projects, you can push more money to those capital improvement projects and maybe do a little less on, the services side or the housing rehab side or something like that. So it really is flexible, but you use those four main goals to kind of guide your decision making. And so the annual action plan process does require you to select projects. And when you're selecting projects, you're looking at things like capacity, if the agency has audit controls, how well the proposed projects are fitting with your goals. You look at the budgets for the proposed activities and then how they are suggesting that they'll implement the activities. So every year this is going to happen. There's this annual selection process for how you're going to spend those dollars that HUD is allocating. So next slide. Okay, I'm so glad I can see this one. So this is one of two slides for the CDBG allocations for this 2021 year. As I said, the 5-year plan, when we develop it, we go right ahead and develop that first year annual action plan. And in this slide, you're seeing some of the capital improvements, or you're seeing the capital improvements that have been proposed for the 2021 funding of CDBG funds. You can see here their public works projects for street improvements, public library, planetarium, and then parks and recreation, the southmost border plain park. And so those are the activities that fit under that public facilities and infrastructure goal. Next slide. Now this slide is still CDBG funds, and these are the social services that were selected. And remember back when I talked about priority needs and you saw that long list of service needs, and then we ran into goals and we said we have this goal for providing essential services to low income and vulnerable populations. These are those services. And you'll see how these activities go back to those priority needs. So you're seeing health services here, youth services, seniors, special needs, all those things that we identified in our priority needs as part of the con plan. And next slide. This slide is for your home dollars. And as I mentioned before, home is primarily it is a housing program. And so with the home dollars, the activities selected here was new construction, home buyer assistance. So that's helping low-income home buyers purchase homes. And so those would be your activities funded with home funds. Next slide. And then finally, the ESG dollars. As I mentioned before, these are primarily to assist with addressing homelessness. So things like street outreach, emergency shelters, rapid rehousing, I already said that. So you have, a few different subrecipients that you're working with here to carry out those homelessness services for the community. And so those are the activities that were proposed in this first year annual action plan. And then next slide. And so the way it works is that we draft up these plans using the data, using the feedback, putting together the priority needs and the goals, and then ultimately selecting these activities. And we put this all into a draft. We put it out for public comment, and that public comment notice was put out, and the comment period was held from July 12th to July 16th. And then we're having this hearing tonight to talk about it. And then once it's finally approved and ready to go to HUD, it will be submitted. There is a firm deadline for submitting it to HUD by August 16th, but it will be submitted well in advance of that deadline. Once HUD receives the consolidated plan and annual action plan, they'll have 45 days to review it. So the latest date you'll get an approval from HUD will be sometime in October, but it'll be 45 days, within 45 days of submission. That is the conclusion of the presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Do we have any questions from the commission? All right. I do have a question. You were mentioning different selections and who was being selected. Was there applicants that did not get selected?
Yes, Mayor. So for the social services, all applicants were selected. For the capital projects, not all departments were selected.
Okay. All right. Thanks. This is an action item. Do we have any action? Or do we have any motions?
Motion to,
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 2, consideration and action to approve a substantial amendment to the 2019 one-year action plan to add emergency solutions grant coronavirus round 2 funds in the amount of $1,964,765. City Manager's Office, OSI.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Nayeli Trejo, and I am with the Office of Strategic Initiatives. Before you, we have our Emergency Solutions Grant for our CV Round 2 proposed projects. This is our substantial amendment to the 2019 one-year action plan to include the ESG CV coronavirus relief funding. Emergency Solutions Grant CV, ESG CV funding is to be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. This allocation was authorized by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. In this second allocation, we've received $1,964,765. The program components and objectives for ESGCV are to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus among individuals and families who are homeless or receiving homeless assistance, and to support additional homeless assistance and homelessness prevention activities to mitigate the impacts created by coronavirus under the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. These program components include our Homeless Management Information System, which is the data entry and collection of our homeless population, Rapid Rehousing, which is housing relocation and stabilization services, Emergency Shelter, which is our renovation, essential services, and shelter operations, as well as Street Outreach, which will be reaching our unsheltered homeless population. We received a total of 11 applications for ESGCV to the City of Brownsville, and we are recommending 11 applicants for funding. On this screen are the proposed ESGCV2 projects that we are recommending for funding. We have a 10% administration cost to the City of Brownsville. The Good Neighbor Settlement House we are recommending a project for HMIS, Street Outreach, and Emergency Shelter. The Ozanam Center, we are recommending an HMIS project, Emergency Shelter, and Rapid Rehousing. Friendship of Women receiving HMIS, Emergency Shelter, and Rapid Rehousing, and recommending that Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley receives funding for HMIS and Rapid Rehousing. Again, for our total of $1,964,765. On this slide, you'll see the ESGCV round 1, we received $819,241, and now we've received our second allocation of the $1 million and change, and with a total amount for $2,787,006. These projects fall below the City Commission pillars. We have our City of Brownsville administration costs falling under governance, with Ozanam and Friendship for Women falling under the quality of life, as well as Good Neighbor and Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley. The city has worked to have these efforts align with the Restoring Dignity for the Homeless Research Initiative project. This was done in partnership with BC Workshop and the City of Brownsville. This is aimed to address the needs of those experiencing homelessness, specifically in our downtown area, while also collaborating with local businesses and partners. The report has been adopted by the city as its official action plan to help address homelessness in our community. These projects that we are proposing reflect this plan and its components, including proposed expand shelter renovations and mobile hygiene stations and restrooms. Noted, we're receiving a historical amount of ESG funding, nearly 10 times our annual allocation. So with this amount, we have shared with our concerns with our field office regarding the high amount that we are receiving. Our field office has provided lots of support through providing technical assistance support for ESGCV and have encouraged full acceptance of the funding despite a tight timeline. Some of the efforts that the HUD field office and our office have already engaged in is an engagement process with our residents, multiple technical assistance meetings with agencies during this funding process, including with a TA partner provided by HUD, and multiple presentations from that TA partner on the administration and management of this ESGCV program. This is the upcoming ESGCV expenditure timeline. We have a 20% expenditure deadline of September 2021. We have an 80% expenditure deadline of March 31st, 2022. And then we have a final expenditure deadline for all ESGCV funds of September 30th, 2022. All funding not expensed by this date will be recaptured by the federal government. We anticipate HUD requesting a spending plan within the next few weeks. We will work alongside our agencies to develop an outline to expense these funds by that final date of September 30th, 2022. Our ESGCV funding next steps. We opened the application submittal process and provided technical assistance to our agencies along with a consultant. We reviewed the ESGCV applications with a technical committee. We are currently presenting the ESGCV substantial amendment to City Commission. Pending that approval, we will submit the substantial amendment to HUD for their final approval. After submitting that to HUD, then we can enter into the agreements with our agencies. Here we've outlined the different allocations that we've had throughout these funding cycles. We have our total HUD allocation, which we receive on an annual basis, which is that orange color below on the top. Then on the blue, we have our CDBG-CV, our COVID allocation for round one, which included CDBG-CV and ESG-CV for a total of $2,416,936. And then that last level, we have our allocation round two of ESG-CV, and then our allocation round three, which was CDBG-CV, which was presented on July 6th to Commission. Along with all of those previous funding cycles, we are anticipating an upcoming allocation through the American Rescue Plan for our home funding, which is $3,324,820. This is a separate allocation than what the city is already receiving through the American Rescue Plan. Thank you for your attention tonight, and I will be available for questions.
I have a question on the funding for the Ozanam Center. I saw those 3 different line items. Is part of that the downtown shelter that I know I've heard about?
Yes, Commissioner, part of that funding is for a potential downtown shelter for the acquisition of the shelter. The location is still to be determined, but we are hoping for that.
We are working with our planning department and our city manager's office because we're aware of the location, working with the Ozanam Center as well, and keeping in mind with the timeline that Ms. Nayeli mentioned.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, this is an action item. Do I have any motions?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, consideration and action to approve resolution number 2021-053, affixing certain other post-employment benefits by prescribing the health benefits for qualified retirees from the city of Brownsville not governed by a collective bargaining agreement. City Manager's Office.
Good evening again. Elizabeth Walker in the Office of the City Manager. Last summer, we brought to you the issue of the OPEB liability and various scenarios considered to address it. Tonight, I'd like to walk through with you a new and different scenario for your consideration. Next slide, please. This is how it is we propose to walk through it this evening. Next slide. But first, what is OPEB? OPEB is other post-employment benefits. These are benefits other than pension that are offered to employees after their retirement. For the city of Brownsville, we make available as an OPEB benefit health insurance that is covered 100% by the city for those eligible retirees. Chapter 175 of the Texas Local Government Code requires that a city provide its retirees access to the health coverage after retirement. However, Brownsville enriches this by subsidizing its cost. The cost is now known to us as a consequence of Gadsby Rule 75, which requires that we account and disclose this liability as part of our financial reporting. Next slide, please. Working with a professional actuary last year, we were able to calculate this liability to comply with disclosure requirements. And what we found is truly alarming. The liability swells to an amount of $205,817,614 by the year 2050. The reason for this really is twofold. The first is, of course, runaway inflationary costs in healthcare, which is not necessarily unique to Brownsville. But secondly, what is unique to Brownsville is that we are blessed with a very stable workforce. And so as many as half of our employees would be eligible to claim this benefit within 5 years. And 539 of just more than 1,100 employees, eligible within the next 5 years. Next slide, please. Reference, the city of Brownsville obviously extends this benefit fully subsidized. This is just kind of a market comparison of other cities and to what extent that they subsidize this benefit. This is only meant to illustrate actual apples to apples as far as the OPEB benefit. But what I feel compelled to share with the commission is this does not illustrate the other pension or post-employment benefits that the city of Brownsville does enrich. For example, South Padre Island is the second city listed. It has a formula by which it calculates by years of service the amount of its contribution with a cap of not to exceed $125. So the South Padre Island does contribute to health insurance for retirees. However, please note it does not contribute to Social Security for its employees. Separately, Harlingen, as another local market example, contributes a cap not to exceed $125 per month towards its retirees' healthcare costs. However, Harlingen does not participate in the pension fund. Next slide, please. There are presently 83 retirees that are participating in or receiving this OPEB benefit. I've identified here for you then what is the cost borne by the city for this benefit to those 83 retirees. And you can see there calculating the monthly premium rate that is subsidized at 100% for 83 retirees is nearly $1.1 million. Because we are self-funded, we also incur the cost of their claims. And so you can see there, each retiree on average is $10,222. And we've broken it down by prescriptions as well as other medical service claims. Next slide, please. We have done what we can to this point to reduce costs. We have increased deductibles for all employees, increased drug copays. We've increased out-of-pocket limits. We've also separately created an OPEB trust fund. This commission then authorized its creation and authorized seed money to be invested in the OPEB trust fund last year. I'll have a report on that forthcoming. But for all that we have done, the liability remains. And working through the various scenarios with the actuary, what remains to create a true impact on that liability is to both limit participation and cap the subsidy. Next slide, please. The OPEB trust fund I mentioned, created last year, is performing spectacularly well. 17.99% return on investment year to date. Tremendous ROI. Sadly, though, it's a drop in the bucket for what it is that we need. Next slide, please. For your consideration this evening, we have a scenario different than what was previously presented in order to make structural changes to the defined OPEB benefit. In summary, it would grandfather all those who are already retired. Those 83 retirees that are presently receiving an OPEB benefit at no cost to them would continue to receive OPEB benefits at no cost to them. The city would extend that to include anyone who retires by October 1 of next year. So those who are presently retired, as well as all those who are on the cusp of retirement, who are eligible to retire and file their retirement by September of next year, they too would be grandfathered at no cost to them. The city would continue to subsidize at 100%. Effective October 1 of 2022, however, for anyone who retires on or after that date, the city proposes stair-stepping the subsidy of the premium by 25% each year until it is that the city reduces to 0% its contributions in 2025, and the retiree would bear the full cost of the age-adjusted premium. Next slide, please. This is an illustration based on then the impact on the OPEB liability under the revised plan being presented to you this evening. For comparison, we've also provided then what would be the change to the OPEB liability under the scenario presented last summer. Next slide.
Elizabeth, the 2021 proposed change is not visible. I can only see a blue and like an aqua.
Okay, sir. This is the problem that the previous presenter suffered as well.
Yeah, and I think for staff, FYI, I think the problem may be the fact that we're using PowerPoint for presentations, because depending on who put it together and what version they're using, compared to whoever's putting in the presentation on tonight, if they're not compatible, this is the result you get. And I've seen that over the years. So we might want to consider using PDF or Adobe for presentations in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you can go back to the previous slide. I will seek to narrate this slide, this visual aid. If you can see the bright blue, as you indicated that you can see essentially the runaway liability. The 2021 proposed change, it starts with an initial 2021 impact of about $55 million. It swells to about $60 million through years 2030, 2033. And then it starts its decrease. And that decrease is simply as it is those who are receiving the OPEB benefit age out of the benefit. Next slide, please.
And I've got that slide on my screen right now for anyone who's interested. I'm pulling it up on my phone, and on my phone I can see the middle line.
Because of the expanded grandfather provision, as well as the prolonged transition period as compared to what was presented last summer, that's why it is that the illustration indicates that the proposed change hovers above the 2020 proposed change.
And Elizabeth, would we still be funding the liability every year? Would we still be contributing?
I believe I understand your question, Mayor.
Okay.
We
we started funding $1 million a couple of years ago, which you just showed increased 17.9%. Are we going to continue to add any money to that fund?
I'm not aware that there will be any contributions for this year, but it certainly is an option that there can be funds added to it going forward.
Okay, well, I haven't heard anything about that, so that's why I'm asking, because we contributed $1 million last year, I believe, towards the liability. We hadn't returned, as you stated, so I'm wondering, I haven't heard anything whether or not we're going to continue to fund anything on a yearly basis. So if we are, I just want to know about that.
Yes, Mayor, I can answer that question. Last year, we spoke about us seed funding the OPEB fund just as a way to start to demonstrate good faith to auditors and to start to get the benefits of the discount rate that we get to counter the hyperinflation of healthcare. Once you all make a decision for how you want to proceed with the benefit, whatever liability will remain for the city, because we'll still have retirees and there'll still be some that will qualify. OPEB trust will still be the vehicle through which we'll fund that liability. But we just didn't want to commit to an ongoing number until we knew what our target was, because we could also overfund it, and it's a trust fund. So there's no reason to lock in the funds if we don't know what the liability is.
Okay, I just want to know that there was plans to continue to fund it in some capacity. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a question. Just to clarify, can you just confirm that we're talking about folks that are retired but not yet 65? Because if I'm correct, at 65, they go on to Medicare and come off the city plan. Am I right?
That is absolutely correct, Commissioner.
So it's not for their entire retirement. It's for their retirement until hitting age 65.
Yes, until age 65 or until otherwise eligible for another plan. So for example, should it is that they have a second career and that career offers them health insurance, then the plan as prescribed would be that they would participate in that health plan rather than the city's. This is essentially gap health insurance. And to your point, it is as defined only for those who retire with a minimum of 20 years service to the city of Brownsville and only upon age 55. Both criteria must be met to qualify for the benefit.
So it's 10 years max for anyone who takes advantage of it.
Under this Plan C, yes, sir. The police retirees do have a separate benefit that's negotiated through the collective bargaining agreement, and they may be eligible as early as age 50.
Okay. If there's more, Elizabeth, you can go ahead. Continue.
Mayor,
All
I'm
right.
available for questions.
Any other questions or concerns?
The only thing that I don't like about this is I feel like it's going to affect a lot of our civilian staff members.
Well, it's only affecting civilian at this point. It's non-CBA, so it's not firefighters, not police. It's the rest of the workforce.
I feel like it's going to affect many of them. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Mayor, let me interject as a matter of clarification. It would affect firefighters because their CBA does follow the non-civil service benefit.
Thanks.
And one of my concerns on this is that October 2022 date, if you retire by then, and when we're talking about potentially 10 years of liability for the city here in this gap insurance, let's say someone is 55 years old, has 20 years with the city and is retirement eligible next year, but loves their job and wants to stick around for another 5, 6, 7 years. That means at max, they'd be taking advantage of it only 3 or 4 years before they're 65. But the way we're doing this now would tell them, nope, you've got to get out the door by 2022, whether you want to or not. Otherwise, you lose these benefits. I don't think that's the ideal scenario. I think there's still some improvements we can make to a solution for the city on this.
We absolutely acknowledge, Commissioner, that this may affect people's personal plans for their retirement, as it may affect their financial plans in their retirement. And so this was our best designed scenario to account for those who are already eligible for retirement if they wanted to stake claim to this benefit now. But it may have one of two effects. Absolutely. It may essentially create an incentive almost to the extent of a golden parachute that encourages people to retire, to accelerate their retirement plans if they had not planned to do so by October 1 of 2022. But on the other side, it may mean that others would extend their employment. They may work longer and make it a different choice there to address the financial impacts of the change in benefit.
What would be the incentive to working longer?
In
You
the
would stay on the
event,
plan.
yes, sir.
Okay, I missed that.
This
It
is
may-
it's post-employment, so it would be upon retirement. If they continue, if they stay employed, then I would assume they still continue to get the benefits they're getting now, right?
Yes,
And the
ma'am.
salary and their salary.
Well, right.
No, but that's true even if we don't adopt this. That's what I'm saying. If we make this change, what's the incentive to working longer by adopting this plan? I don't see one. It's the same, it's a status quo for those that continue to work. Yeah, I think there might be some other solutions we haven't considered. I'd like to take a little bit closer look at this. I know this has been on the shelf for a year, but since myself and like Commissioner Cardenas are brand new, I would like at least an additional 30 days to look at options on this. And one of my biggest concerns also is, and I understand where we're going, those folks that aren't eligible yet, and let's say they won't be eligible by October of next year because they'll only be at 18 or 19 years of service at that point. But they've foregone other career opportunities in anticipation of these are the benefits the city has, and that's something I'm looking forward to. So I'm going to stick to this job versus taking something that might have been more advantageous to me. So people have relied on something like this. So I think a little bit more time is appropriate before we make a final decision.
Elizabeth, can you remind us what is the premium that I know premium changes every year, but if it was this year that the retiree would have to cover the costs themselves, what is the premium?
1,000 something, no? 1,000.
$1,097 per month is what would be the full cost of the premium. Yes, ma'am. But under this plan, they would not be billed for the full cost of the premium until the year 2025.
Right. No, I understand that. And that's pretty comparable. I mean, I looked at it for myself since I no longer have health insurance, and it was the same through the state. So.
And this is just one plan, one tier that we offer?
Yes, Commissioner.
Well, I think there's some benefits to spouses or children, but is that something that the employer would have to pay for?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Another question that I had is, it shows that right now there's 83 people that are receiving benefits. Is that pretty much the number on any given basis? Does it revolve in and out, or what have you seen as far as how many people are typically on this per year?
Seen a nominal fluctuation between 78 and 83 retirees receiving the benefit over my historical examination of the data.
Okay. I was surprised actually at the number. I figured it'd be a lot larger.
So Commissioner De Los Santos, are you going to make the motion to table, or how do we do this?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure everybody had the chance to get their thoughts out if there were still other thoughts out there, but I'm absolutely planning to move to table.
Thought as well. Why don't we stop with what's going on for new hires till we decide what we do and table the rest of this for another 30 days so we can understand what we can do and look at other options.
I like the suggestion. Is that an option for us as it was noticed and advertised? Council?
Commissioner, if you want to formulate this as an amendment, a floor amendment, to approve the item as presented by
staff.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if with the amendment that the rest of the retirees or potential retirees would be decided upon within 30 days, that could fly. Or you could just table the whole item and take it all together in one piece.
I'm comfortable with Commissioner Cardenas' suggestion that we approve this, but with this change only applicable to any new hires from here forward while we revisit for existing employees.
Renee, but is that really possible in terms of new hires in the police and fire department?
This has nothing to do with the police department, I believe. I've just found out it does have to do something with the firefighters, but I know it has nothing to do with the police department.
Yes,
Lene,
Commissioner.
did you understand my question?
Yes, Commissioner. Basically, if you will remember, the firefighters ride with civilians, basically regarding this specific benefit. So it would affect all new hires, and that would affect potentially, of course, the firefighters, but not the police department.
So in other words, if we adopted that amendment as suggested, it would not apply to new hires in which category?
Civilians and firefighters, Commissioner.
It would not apply to them. So a new hire would not really be protected by amending it in that way.
Well, if you amend it this way, basically, this is the proposal by city management, except they want to cap this at all new hires. So basically, they want to grandfather all current employees for the next 30 days. So this would definitely not be an option for all new hires from here on forward, should you approve this item.
That's what I'm trying to ask. So I don't have a problem tabling it so that the new folks can, commissioners can, think about it and look at it more closely. But my concern was if we divide it into new hires and not, that it's really not protecting all new hires.
That's a good point, Commissioner Gowan. And that being the case, I'll
mean,
just
if
make the
you're-
motion to table.
If you're gonna
table it,
wait,
yeah.
then wait, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? As opposed to taking it in segments, because the segments are deceiving.
Yeah, that's understood.
Okay, we have a motion to table by Commissioner De Los Santos. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Motion passes. This item will be tabled. Thank you.
Item 4, consideration and action to authorize a rate adjustment plan for the Brownsville Event Center City Manager's Office.
Honorable Mayor, City Commission, community members, my name is Damaris McGlone. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Brownsville. And with me presenting tonight is Ms. Elizabeth Walker. Today, we're proposing to establish the local market rate and cost recovery rate for the Brownsville Event Center. The last adjustment to the Brownsville Event Center was the corporate rate in 2009. To share a little bit of background with you, how we got here for new commissioners, the staff, and the public. In fiscal year 2001, the Brownsville Event Center was established as and it was recently established as an enterprise fund to track true cost of its maintenance, operations, and revenues. As a result of the 5-year financial analysis of the general fund, as well as the impacts of COVID-19 and temporary closure, stressing the need for long-term financial planning. So there were some opportunities that were explored for repurposing and reinvesting our funding for future maintenance needs. Next slide, thank you. So on this slide, you'll see a picture of, it's our promotional picture of our corporate rates for the event center. This was built in 2001 and it was deeded to the city as a gift from a local developer in conjunction with some grant funding. It is a first-class facility that we have taken considerable care to upkeep and are quite proud of, that we can offer it to our community and our visitors for use. So this is what we'll be proposing and will go into effect if approved. It is the rates for approval. It's a 25 stair-stepped increase, which is compounded over the next 3 fiscal years. We're also proposing that instead of 3 different rate cards, we had a separate rate card for social, corporate, and nonprofit rates to collapse all of those rates into one card and then discount nonprofits up to 25% and then possibly an additional 10% for non-peak days, which is Monday through Wednesday. The new proposed rates are as seen, being a 25% increase for each room. In this slide, you'll see a local venue comparison rate at a per person rate. So sometimes those numbers can get really big, so we wanted to consolidate that to a really manageable number. And so we calculated the local venues in Brownsville at a per person rate. And the event center is among the lowest rates locally, as seen on the bar graph on the left. The far left blue bar is the Brownsville Event Center rate at $4.76 per person. The other low is the Jacob Brown at 3.11, and then the Amigo Land Convention Center at $4.50 per person. The highest rate is at $60 per person, and then the mid-range is between $16 to $32 per person. That's kind of the standard median. The bar graph on the right hand of the slide compares the mean of local venues compared to the event center over the next 3 fiscal years. So you might be wondering, okay, as we raise our rates 25%, where does that compare to our local market? And so this graph demonstrates that. And we remove the highest and lowest rates and then average the prices of all listed venues. The Brownsville Event Center will still be under the local market rates in fiscal year 24, as it will be at 70% of local market rate. Essentially, by adopting this rate adjustment plan in this proposed stair-step manner, we are playing catch up with the local market in a way that is feasible. A look at the local market shows that the local market can withstand the proposed rate adjustments. Next slide. So this graph shows the method by which we assess the event center usage from fiscal year 19. The maroon colored bar, it's not labeled, but it shows the total room rentals for that year. And then you'll see the colored bars next to it to the left of it, which represents each day as itemized below. So for example, in 2019, the Palo Alto room had 72 rentals, 21 on Saturdays, 13 on Wednesdays, and 4 on Mondays. We assess the whole year, assessing the room rental rates by the day of the week. And so we use evidence-based decision-making to recommend the 10% off-peak rate Monday through Wednesday, the lesser used days. Whereas on Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, we have about a 98% booking rate for peak days. On this slide, it's a little busy, but it shows you at the bottom the spreadsheet data for those usage dates, which we calculated our adjustment rates. So the top right bar graph shows the anticipated Brownsville Event Center revenue based on our 2019 data. So should we have the same rentals, very similar to what we've had in the past, moving forward, then these are the revenues we should anticipate. The green line represents the Brownsville Event Center, which its cost recovery rate, or it's about our operational cost is about $800,000, and that would be our break-even point. And then you'll see above that line in fiscal year 24, because the event center is an enterprise fund, it needs additional revenues to self-sustain and reinvest in its future maintenance. And at 20 years, it's been lovingly worn and has future needs. So we know that it needs a new sound system, it needs some future rehabilitation. Eventually it'll need a new roof, a new chiller, and we need to be able to adapt with future offerings and technologies. So any additional funds will go back to reinvest into the facility. Next slide. So we recommend approval of the proposed rate adjustment plan in accordance with ordinance for our Chapter 74-17 fees, which authorizes the city manager to establish usage fees to park facilities. And therefore, the approval of this action item today will only allow these rate adjustments to take effect on October 1, 2021, and then the subsequent start of the fiscal years. And then lastly, do you have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions on this?
I've got, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Damaris, I was going to ask on the nonprofits, and I want to make sure I follow the math, because I heard about collapsing into one rate, raising the rates 25%, and then offering a 25% discount to nonprofit organizations. What does that look like for them when we're talking about corporate is going to pay 25% higher? What does that new formula do for a nonprofit organization, what they were paying today versus what they would pay under that new structure? Is that a 25% increase as well, or is that math a little off?
Depending on when they book, a nonprofit could go up as high as 35% off on if it's a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday rental. Mm-hmm. And then based on the rental, it would be 25% off the set rate. I have not done the math to show what the bookings for that nonprofit rate, But what I can say is what the local market shows is that at that per person rate, we are considerably as much as 120% the local market.
No, I get that. I just want to make sure if we're talking about raising it 25% for the corporate rate, but with that new formula, it may be that nonprofits are paying 30% more, 35% more because of the way the math works out.
It's 25%. It'll be a 25% across the board rate.
Yeah, but it's 25% of the new corporate rate.
Correct. Of the
Right, and the nonprofits would align with the corporate rate. I understand.
Yes.
his
Yes.
point, yeah.
We don't have that differential quantified for you, Commissioner.
Yeah, that's one thing I'd be curious about. And my second question would be, I expect there are not any bookings that are on the books today. I think we canceled everything during COVID. Is that right?
we have, so right now what we have on the books is for where we go. For 2021, we've had 146 out of 365. So for this year, it's about 40%. For 2022, we have booked 79 of 365 days. So that's 22%. We have not opened 2023 yet. And so there's 0 there, but there's been 31 requests for 2023 so far.
And for individuals or groups or corporations that have booked already for those dates you're referring to, this rate change would not affect them, correct?
An existing contract would be grandfathered in.
Very good.
This is proposed to go into effect October 1 with the new fiscal year. So then all new contracts would go for that year. And so there would not be a rush either, because if it was, let's say for 2023, we have that rate, and then the contract would be written for the 2023 rate since it's already approved.
Yeah, I like the move. I'd just like us to look a little more closely at the nonprofits to ensure it's a fair adjustment.
And it's always at the will of the commission as well to adjust anything and approvals for nonprofits, as well as the city manager has that authority. So as we move forward, that could be considered on an individual case basis. We have a fee waiver policy.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
I'm looking, yep, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5, consideration and action to authorize the city manager to enter into a Chapter 380 Economic Development Agreement related to Project Somino and to execute any pertinent documentation for its implementation. City Manager's Office.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. I'm sure many of you are aware of a new project in downtown Brownsville. It was a former bank building and then Payless. And the city, just as a reminder, the city is authorized by Chapter 380 of the Texas Local Government Code to make grants of public resources in order to promote local economic development in partnership with the city to stimulate growth, businesses, and commercial activity. We have an adopted economic development program to promote local economic development and stimulate this activity within our city limits. We are proposing to enter into a 380 agreement providing for a one-time cash incentive in the amount of $500,000 to Come Dream, Come Build, our local affordable housing partner. The location of the building is at 1158 East Elizabeth Street in downtown Brownsville. The project includes job creation, income creation, tax revenue, also because Payless has been closed for quite a lot of time. We are also right now, with the closure of the H-E-B store, are lacking in those types of food and amenities downtown that we need as we try to increase the amount of housing in downtown Brownsville. It also will, speaking of CDBG, there's a lack of affordable housing for homeless and also people with less means. There's also, it also create jobs and that the part of the project includes investing $14 million in property acquisition, equipment, machinery, furniture, fixtures, and construction and labor costs at the location. So that is a large investment in downtown. The construction of a rooftop hydroponic garden, a cafe, also the construction of 40 affordable housing units, a small grocery store at the location, and a minimum of 18 new full-time jobs. So the return on investment is there in terms of providing this incentive of $500,000. Now, the 380 agreement does require the completion of these 5 activities, and it also requires that the project be completed within 5 years. I think they have a really aggressive time schedule and want to complete it, of course, before that. They've already acquired the building, CDCB, and I think it's an exciting time in our history here in downtown. I said, given the closure of the HEB grocery store. So staff recommends approval. And we
Okay,
have
we're looking for.
Nick Mitchell Bennett here also.
Does anybody have any questions for Helen or for Nick, if he's here?
I'm here.
Yeah, on the 18 new full-time jobs, what type of average wages are we talking about for those positions?
We estimate they'll start somewhere around no less than $10 an hour.
Thank you.
And then go up to, grocery store managers and affordable housing managers will be obviously much higher than that. That would be a stalker wage, at the grocery store.
Very good.
Any other questions or concerns? All right, we are looking for a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into the 380.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-057, authorizing in accordance with section 26.04 C1 of the Texas Tax Code that a city officer or employee calculate the voter approval tax rate for tax year 2021 financial services.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Commissioners. My name is Lupe Arana, the Finance Director. This item, before we start, there is a correction that's going to be needed upon your consideration and approval. We will need to amend it to say under section 26.04C without the -1. I'll go ahead and start the presentation. Under Property Tax Code, section 26.04C, the governing body is required to designate an official, by official action, an officer by August 1st to calculate the no new revenue and the voter approved tax rate for the taxing entity. The designated person will also certify the accuracy of the tax calculation worksheet. We recommend via resolution 2021-057 to designate the finance director to calculate these tax rates. Questions?
Anybody have any questions? All right, looking for a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
The approval is with the change in the language, correct? Instead of the.
Without the dash.
Without the -1.
Yes. Just for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, consideration and action regarding relocation of Neal House to Linear Park, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the commission. We're here for update and to receive some feedback from the commission regarding the relocation of the Neal House. For our new members, this project was approved back in October of 2020 when the city commission included funding within the planning department's annual work plan to relocate the Neal House. We returned to the city commission in November of last year and asked for the commission to select the final location for the Neal House. And the city commission settled on the linear park as the final location for the Neal House structure. Since then, we did have the Historic Preservation Commission weigh in on the relocation back on 6/11/21. They asked that the city manager have a tarp placed over the structure to prevent damage from water infiltration. That was completed by our facility department prior to this most recent series of rainstorms. The commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, also requested that the city commission consider postponing the relocation until an end-use plan was put in place for the Neal House. Basically, they're asking what will happen to the structure once it's relocated. The next recommendation by the Historic Preservation was to request the city commission its final location decision. And then finally, the Historic Preservation Commission recommended that the McGonigal architect addition to the Neal House be separated from the Neal House and prepare a plan to relocate that structure separately and apart from the Neal House to the linear park. So with that, the planning department is continuing on the direction received by the city commission back in November to relocate the Neal House structure to the linear park. We have received, we are continuing the work on the foundation with a structural engineer, and we have received a bid from a qualified mover with experience in moving historic structures that we're finalizing a bid package for presentation to the city commission in the next few weeks. With that, we'll take any direction from the city commission.
Mr. Vasquez, where are we on, you did say that the tarp was placed over the structure already, right?
That's correct.
Okay, now do we have the end use plan in place at all for the Neal House or no?
No, sir. We've had stakeholders express interest in managing the property permanently once it's restored. The Brownsville Housing Authority, the Brownsville Historic Association has expressed an interest. The art nonprofit is also that operates the museum has mentioned that they may be interested in a permanent and long-term role. And the city's Parks Department also may have an interest in operating the structure and including a restroom facility either adjacent or inside the property for use by the general public and those using the linear park.
Okay, my concern is this. Overwhelmingly, it's just the condition of the structure, right? So if we place a tarp over it and one is satisfied that that's going to protect it, I think to move it to linear park right now would be a little premature because we don't necessarily know what we're going to do with it yet. Also, I know that there's probably going to be some issues with where it would be placed and just the general condition of the structure as it is now being dropped into linear park. My concern is just, is linear park really the best option? Obviously, we voted for that. We may want to reconsider that at some point, but really now, if it's being protected, I feel comfortable with that, but I think we're going to need to figure out what we're going to do with it before we move it and see if we have the funding to do it, and if we don't, we're going to need to set that aside. But I have a feeling we're gonna have some issues possibly with the public if we move the structure in its current condition to linear park with the amenities that we have at linear park and some of the activities that we have going on.
I agree, Mayor. We had that problem with the last house that we put there before it was refurbished. The public was outraged at the eyesore that it created. And of course, infestation with whatever type of animals and things like that. But I agree with you.
Well, there's a lot more going on now than there was back then, so I'm assuming we'd have even probably more pushback, which is
Oh,
understandable.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I would say I've got additional concern as well because the Laureles Ranch House is a beautiful facility, but for the most part, all we get to do is look at it from the outside. It's not open to the
true.
public. The bathrooms aren't available to the public. And I know this weekend for Farmers Market and Lunada, the park grounds were pristine, but it was incredibly overgrown inside the Laureles Ranch House area. So that's a big concern of mine. If we want to keep moving houses here, if that's what we're creating, that's a problem. I think the outdoor space for public use should be the priority in a park.
Well, the difference between this one and the other one, Commissioner, is that we own this one. We don't own the other one. So we don't necessarily have the ability. I mean, I know it's sketchy because we own the land. They paid for the rehab. They manage it. So there's never really been any sort of MOU put firmly into place, which we probably need. But at this point, they control it. The benefactor or the person that paid for it has put it into really BHA's trust to manage it. So that's another issue. But this one would be something we would control, my understanding. So I think that'd be different. But yeah, I do agree with you.
I
I'm
agree
all for
with
the-
all those thoughts. I agree with all those thoughts. Rick, why do they want to move the McGonigal house to Linear Park? Do they have a particular use in mind for that portion of the house?
I don't, what I recall from the Historic Preservation Commission's comments is they felt that the McGonigal architect is significant and merits some recognition. Exactly how you would accomplish that with separating the structure into two, I'm not sure and don't have an opinion what a preservationist might think. But they felt that it does deserve some level of recognition.
Well, you've got one right there in the room with you. Does he know the answer to that? Hey, Juan.
Yeah, hello. So
the question from Commissioner Gowan was the McGonigal portion.
The commissioner, the Historic Preservation Commission was saying that in order to maybe save the real structure, we could separate the new house from the real structure, and maybe someone could bring a new design for the facade of the Ruth McGonigal house, and then fit it in another place. That could be Linear Park or any other place.
Has anybody determined whether or not it can actually be separated? I'm sorry, Commissioner. Yeah, Juan, has anybody even determined whether or not the McGonigal addition can be separated? Because the overall condition of the structure is pretty poor. That addition on the back is I mean, it's pretty bad too. And I'm not sure I'd be in favor of moving that to Linear Park, right? I know that this is maybe this is just recommendations from the HPC. It's not any sort of binding thing. We're ultimately the ones that decide. But I'm not really sure about the condition of it or if anybody's actually even assessed whether or not it can be separated.
Well, we don't have an assessment from a structural engineer. However, when we performed the RFQ for the mover did express concerns. We'll share those with you once we have them in writing from the moving company and we present their proposal to the city commission. But they do have reservations about the structural integrity of the McGonigal addition.
I have a question. I don't know if it's I'm not familiar with restoration, but can certain activities be done currently prior to it being moved?
Stabilization activities certainly could be performed. We would want to make sure they're supervised by a qualified structural engineer and preservation architect if possible. But certainly there's supports that could be added to the structure. There's some of the roof could be repaired as well, I would think, as an interim measure. But yes, Commissioner, we could have some interim steps.
Well, this is an action item, Mr. Vasquez. Is there any sort of action you need from us, or I mean, what are you looking for, if anything, or what can we do at this point?
If we're not ready to move forward with the actual relocation, we would just like the commission to kind of set aside that objective at this time until we have an in-use plan in place. That's an option for the commission. You could direct us to continue forward, or you could send the item back to the Historic Preservation Commission for additional recommendations if you'd like.
Well, I think we've got the recommendations from that department already. I don't think that's going to change much, and I'd rather kind of not send it back. They've already given us their thoughts. If anything, I think the most prudent option would be to, now that the tarp's on there, is to probably just wait on the move until we have a plan. If that requires action, then you know, I'd open it up for any sort of motion.
I'd even like to go further and say that we rescind the approval for the linear park location. Not to say that it would not end up there ultimately, but just so that we are opening up to start looking at other options, and that when the plans come back, it's what it could be in different locations of the city. But I think we move forward with stabilization and restoration as best we can with the funding that's in place, but rescind the linear park designation.
I'll second that.
Well, can you just go ahead and make a formal motion then, Commissioner Dos Santos?
Certainly. We move forward with the stabilization of the Neal House, but we rescind the approval of linear park as the ultimate destination for it.
I second.
Roy,
We have a mo-
Roy,
we have a
do
motion.
you want,
Motion and a second. Go ahead, Commissioner Gunn.
just as clarification, do you want to say a word about postponing the move of the McGonigal House as well, assuming that it can be moved separately?
I agree. I was thinking that, but you're right. Just a two designation. My intent was for the whole thing to be on hold. None of it's approved for linear park yet.
Well, right now, as it sits, literally, it's all one. So the Neal House includes the McGonigal addition. So I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Board appointments, item 1, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-051 to replace and appoint 2 new members of the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation Board of Directors, City Manager's Office.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. The recommendation is to appoint the 2 new members to the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation. Representing District 3, we would have Commissioner Roy de los Santos, small L, sorry, and representing District 4, Commissioner Pedro Cardenas. For your approval, please.
I'll make the motion to appoint
Motion to
Commissioner
approve.
Roy de los Santos and Commissioner Pedro Cardenas to the GBIC board.
Can I make a point real quick? This is Victor Flores. It is for the replacement, so within the motion, you could also include replacement of the previous 2 and then the new appointment of the 2 new members.
Okay, to replace Commissioner Joel Munguia and to replace Commissioner Bernice.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and that motion works, Victor?
Discussion?
Any discussion?
Yes. I would like to say just a couple of things on this, and I understand the action the commission took at the time was appropriate. And I know we've got some great momentum going at GBIC. I fully support that. I'm willing to accept this position. However, it is a priority for me to see this transition back to a citizen-run board of directors. And I don't want us to go in there and take 7 people off and put 7 brand new people on while we've got so many great projects in the works. So, and this is not anything I'm going to recommend as binding action right now, but just so that you guys know where I am in taking this seat, I would hope that within 60 days, we have at least 2 members come off. And then whether we do it quarterly from there, however we think it's appropriate, so that we bring citizens on little by little to get up to speed with the projects and we keep that great momentum going, but that we absolutely start the process of transitioning back to a citizen-run board.
I agree
And
with
we
that.
want to be one of the first ones off in 60 days.
I agree with that completely, Commissioner.
Yeah, I think we need to start to transition that way. That was always the intent. It was when the motion was done or when this occurred originally, it was done for no more than a year. I can't remember when it was done. If it
Which
was
is
November,
coming up.
December. Yeah, I can't remember if it was November,
It was
December.
December.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it would be detrimental if at the end of the year, all 7 of us come off and 7 new people come in because we've got so many great things happening. So I think it should be drawn out a little bit further, but I think we start the process sooner. We start the process at the beginning of Q4 this year.
I'm glad you said it, Commish.
Okay,
So
we have
that's not part of the, we have the motion to do that, meaning
Right.
remove and appoint the 2, correct?
Right. Yeah, we have a motion in a second. And this was just discussion. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 2, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-052 to appoint 1 member to the LGBTQ+ task force, city manager's office.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. This item is for 1 position for the LGBTQ task force. We have Commissioner Roy de los Santos for District 3, who was appointed by Commissioner Munguia. Next slide. And these are the applicants and the districts that they represent.
Well, Commissioner De Los Santos, I think this should be yours unless somebody else has a nomination. But I mean, I think this one makes sense. You're coming off, and this you were Joel's appointment, so.
And I agree, Mayor. And let me say that I think the commission has done a great job in the work over the last year of trying to transition to 7-member boards so that every commissioner gets a pick on each board to ensure representation of the people's elected representatives. So with that, and I hope that will continue with all board appointments, because I know we've gone to great lengths to make that happen, even in quasi-judicial boards. For this board in particular, I nominate Angel Rodriguez to take my place. He's done a lot of work on the committees of this task force.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Angel Rodriguez. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, I just realized that Joel appointed Roy and then Roy actually became the city commissioner. That's so interesting.
Yep. That's why it makes sense.
Yeah, and I know that as task forces go, the opinion from legal is that a commissioner can serve on a task force, but I believe unless statute is mandating that the commissioner serve, I think it's always best to have citizens out there as much as possible.
It's really special. Yeah.
Next item, Lori.
Item 3, consideration and action to create the health plan committee and authorize the mayor to appoint its 3 commission members, city manager's office.
Mayor and Commission. City staff hopes to establish a health plan committee to examine the self-fund performance and the health plan design to maximize the best value of healthcare for its municipal employees. We expect that this will function much like the existing budget committee of the City Commission, with 3 City Commission members to meet as needed. Mayor, do
Okay.
you have appointments?
Excuse me?
Do you have 3 appointments?
I think the natural selection for something like this should definitely be Dr. Gowan if she accepts.
I think first we need to give you the authority, Mayor. Don't.
Well, that would make sense, Roy.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to create the health plan committee and authorize the mayor to appoint its 3 commission members.
Second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, thank you. And then as far as selections, Dr. Gowan, you're the natural fit for this. Would you accept that nomination?
She said yes. Thumbs up.
She stepped away, so I guess that's going to be a yes. Roy, I think you do a good job on this if you'd like.
I accept.
Okay, and then as far as others, I don't know if anybody, I'd go by seniority if Commissioner Tetra would be interested.
Well, I would love to. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, all right, Commissioner. Well, there's a 3.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
Item 4, consideration and action to approve resolution number 2021-056 to appoint tax increment reinvestment board of directors positions 1 through 7 as provided in ordinance number 2021-1678-A, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Mayor and members of the commission, this ordinance 2020-1678 and 78A created TERS Board number 4, also known as the Madera TERS. It's a 1,300 acre TERS. All 1,300 acres have been annexed into the city. It is a developer contribution of approximately $137 million in a city of Brownsville and Cameron County contribution of approximately $112 million. The city of Brownsville has position 1 through 7. The county has 3 positions. Individuals serving in odd numbered positions will serve a 2-year term. Those members serving in an even numbered position will serve a 1-year term and then can be reappointed to 2-year terms thereafter. Once you've appointed your board members, the city commission then selects a chair from your appointees. As far as the TERS itself, there's still a couple of more actions required for the city commission before the TERS is often established and running. The TERS board will have to review the preliminary project plan and the finance plan and finalize those documents and forward them for the city commission to approve, and the city commission will also enter an overall development agreement with the developer. With that, we'll take your TERS board nominations or appointments, I'm sorry.
And the qualifications for this, Rick, is it going to be people that live within the city limits, or is there anybody we can appoint?
Yeah, I don't think the enabling ordinance spoke to that issue either way, Mayor. What I would offer is this is not a typical advocacy board or a project board. This is more a financial oversight and an audit type of role. The board may not even meet for the first couple of years as the TERS fund builds up its revenue. It may not have enough revenue for the developer to submit a reimbursement for a project until year 4 or 5. We'll have to meet once or twice a year to meet statutory requirements, but other than that, it probably will not really get rolling until the 4th and 5th year.
Okay. And I assume that there's no applicants on file for this, right? This is just appointments from us.
That's correct, Mayor. You did ask us to bring it back at the next available meeting. This is that meeting, and we didn't have time to go out and open up an application process. As you all know, the developer is eager to enter into that final development agreement. They've already started working on the first phase of the project, so.
Okay, very good. Do we have any nominations?
Yeah, having researched this and knowing that it was going to be financial in nature and oversight, I'd like to name Arvin Tucker as my nominee.
Oh, that's a good one. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for Arvin Tucker. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
I'll move to approve Sandra Duran.
We have a motion to appoint Sandra Duran. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Motion passes. I haven't asked this person, but he's a banker and he knows this kind of stuff, so I'm going to go ahead. I would nominate Richard Abate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right.
So I haven't asked either, but I'll nominate Billy Bradford.
We have a motion for Billy Bradford. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll
We
second.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Commissioner Gowan?
Have a name. I've been traveling and I didn't anticipate this one coming up. So can I hold mine till next
Sure.
time?
Sure. I don't see an issue with that. Commissioner Cowan?
Sure, I'd like to nominate Luis Eduardo Garduño.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for Reese. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Commissioner Galowski?
Like Commissioner Gowan, I would like to postpone until the next meeting.
Okay, very good. So that we have Arvin Tucker, Sandra Duran, Richard Abate, Billy Bradford, and I believe the rest are tabled. Oh, and Luis Garduño, I'm sorry. And the other two from Commissioner Gowan and Commissioner Galowski will be hopefully next meeting. Thanks.
Mayor, will you select a chair amongst those that are already appointed, or would you like to defer
I think
that?
they themselves should probably select the chair if they meet. If not, then if I need to select one, then I would just say that, I mean, we can go ahead and have Billy Bradford be the chair if he accepts. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Item 5, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-044 to appoint or reappoint 5 members to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Good evening, Commissioners, Honorable Mayor. These appointments are for the Planning and Zoning Commission Board. There are 5 positions. These positions were created through term expirations, 1 resignation, and 2 positions that are actually about to expire. Those positions being, for example, Commissioner Derek Benavides and Ronald Mills, and also Commissioner Troy Whittemore, whose term expired but is also available and willing to continue serving on the board. Now, we do want to point out Commissioner Vanessa Castillo did resign from the board, so we are trying to fill in that that vacancy as well to finish out the term. And finally, Commissioner Mr. Abraham Golonsky. So as mentioned, there are 5 positions available, of which 2 of them can be, I'm sorry, 3 of them can be either replaced or reappointed, which would be Commissioner Benavides, Ronald Mills, and Troy Whittemore. And can we go to the next slide? And so this would be all the applicants in order of district as requested that applied for the positions.
So then I think there's 5 total then, am I correct, that we're looking to assign today?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. I'll go ahead and I'll nominate Derek Benavides to get reappointed.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second for Derek Benavides. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Eliseo Davila.
I would like to.
Commissioner Cardenas. All right, we have a motion for Eliseo Davila in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
I would like to move.
Motion passes.
So sorry,
Commissioner-
I start talking too
That's
soon.
okay. Commissioner Gallagher, go ahead.
I would like to motion to reappoint Troy Whittemore.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second for reappointment of Troy Whittemore. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
I would like to reappoint Ronald Mills.
We
Second.
have we have a motion to reappoint Ron Mills in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
I'll move to appoint Aida Rodriguez.
We have a motion for Ida Rodriguez. Is there a second? Is there a second for Ida Rodriguez?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion passes. That's 5. Thanks.
Thank you.
Item 6, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-041 to appoint one board member to the Main Street Advisory Board, Planning and Redevelopment.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Miriam Suarez, and I am with the Planning Department and Board Liaison for the Main Street Advisory Board. Tonight, we are requesting the appointment of one board member to the Main Street Advisory Board, as stipulated by ordinance. 7 shall be community members and 2 shall be city employees, serving as staff support from both the grants and planning departments. Next slide, please. We received 11 applications, and at this time, we kindly request for you to appoint one board member.
And Miriam, I'm sorry, who's getting replaced here?
Commissioner Anise.
I'll move to appoint Alberto Velez.
Second.
We have a motion for Alberto Velez and a second. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Ooh.
And Miriam, why is Commissioner Anise getting replaced? Is it because he was a commissioner, or, I mean, what is?
Correct. Through the ordinance, it doesn't require a commissioner to serve on the board. He was appointed at his request as a commissioner.
Okay.
Does legal have an opinion on that?
Yeah, because he's a committee member now, so just legal may want to check on that. See if he's ineligible for some reason. If he is, then obviously we can go with the nomination. Otherwise, I'm not sure if there's an issue. But anyway, y'all go ahead and check on that, and we already have a nomination if that's the case. Okay.
We will.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Item 7, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-036 to appoint one member to the Brownsville Public Library System Advisory Board.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. I'm Brenda Trevino, Library Branch Manager. Today I come to you because we do have one member appointment to replace Ms. Rose Freeman, who left the library board. Next slide, please. We do have 18 applicants for your consideration.
Okay. Can you go back to the previous slide then? Trying to see who. Okay, so Golonsky, Tetro, Gowan. Okay. All right, you can go to the next one.
I just want to clarify, Mayor, those are not all my appointments. What happened when that was made was they were all up for reappointment, so we moved for the slate.
Okay. They're really good appointments though.
I know what they are. I'm not trying. I just want to make sure people know I'm not trying to control the library.
All right. Do we have any nominations?
I would suggest that since the one person that's coming off is from District 4, that we give that pick to the District 4 Commissioner.
Pedro?
Recommendations, I don't know anybody there.
I can vouch for Emilio Barrera and Merrill Hammonds.
That's, oh, okay. I thought you were looking just for District 4, because in District 4, I can vouch for Pequeño, and then Cynthia Lizardi is a former librarian. She's got a lot of knowledge in this. I think she'd be a good appointment.
Especially because the library is in District 4, would the commission be interested in holding the spot till Commissioner Cardenas can find an appointment?
No, actually, the library is in District 3.
Oh.
There's
Right.
also a library branch in District 1.
Yep. Okay, I mean, I'd open it up if somebody wants to nominate somebody, then if Commissioner Cardenas isn't able, then, I mean, we can just open it up. Unless you want to, go ahead.
I'll nominate Juan Pequeño.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion and a second for Juan Pequeño. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-034 to appoint one member to the Brownsville Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Multimodal Transportation Mobility.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Commissioners. My name is Joel Garza. I'm the Multimodal Transportation Director. We have before you one available position since Ms. Yvette Bella did resign. And so next slide, please. We did receive 7 applicants.
Was there not an applicant, Raul Sayas?
That's sent in after the.
Saturday. He's a big bike guy.
Technically, Commissioner, they don't have to have applied. We can always nominate from off the list, but.
Well, I would like to nominate Raul Sayas.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Raul Sayas. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. He's a really good selection.
And quick question, Mayor, before we move off of this one, I noticed that these are 3-year terms on this committee, which seems inconsistent with our other boards, and also that we don't have 7 members here. So that might be something that staff should look into amending in the future.
I agree.
Good catch.
Mayor, we'll go back and revise the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-046 to appoint one member of the commission to the Paseo de la Resaca Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance District Board, Office of the City Secretary. This item was tabled from May 18th, 2021. And this, Joel Munguia, the former commissioner from District 3, was serving on this board. And so this is just to replace him as a board member. And
Mr. De Los Santos, this is your district.
That's what I was gonna say. This area actually borders between 2 and 3, but I've already served on it. I don't know if Commissioner De Los Santos would be interested.
You're on mute, Roy.
Thank you, Mayor. My concern would be that there seems to be a lot of representation from District 3, and because this is a city amenity, it might be more appropriate that someone other than the District 3 commissioner serve on it to give other districts a chance.
Well, yeah, maybe.
I know it's a commissioner seat, but.
Yeah, but just to clarify though, this is an actual District 4 Paseo de la Resaca. So it's actually for this specific area, Commissioner. So that's probably why everybody's from District 3, because it's actually their district, because it's an amenity within their district that was set up this way.
Okay.
If not, we can always appoint a staff member because it is very time consuming. These meetings are about 2 hours each. Maybe a staff member could be appointed into that spot to keep us informed and maybe just email us the progress.
Well, I nominate Dr. Gowan.
You mean newly retired Dr. Gowan?
She's got time.
He's on the health,
I'm fine with this board. I've actually been interested in it, and it is an amenity that's open to the whole public for the whole city, not just that district. So.
Okay, great. So you have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 10, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-043 to confirm the appointment of members to the Civil Service Commission, Office of the City Secretary. And Ms. Walker, are you going to present this one?
I will.
Okay, good.
Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 143 prescribes that the 3 members shall be appointed by the municipality's chief executive and confirmed by the governing body of the municipality. As such, this evening, the 1 member has resigned and 2 members' terms have expired. And so the city manager, as the chief executive, submits to you the reappointment of Ben Nunez and Jorge Green, and the new appointment of Carlos Garcia. Upon confirmation of these appointments, lots will be drawn to stagger their terms in compliance with 143.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the nomination from our city manager of Ben Nunez, Jorge Green, and Carlos Garcia. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 11, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-050 to appoint or reappoint 2 members to the Brownsville Public Utilities Board, Office of the City Secretary.
I would like to reappoint Sandra Sines.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to reappoint Sandra Sines. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those
And for-
opposed? Motion passes. Thank
And
you.
for District 3, I'd like to nominate Art Rendon.
Second.
We have a motion to nominate Art Rendon and a second. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we get a hand count on, or can we get poll the commission on that? We have an aye from Commissioner De Los Santos. Who else?
Aye.
Commissioner Cardenas,
Aye.
Commissioner Tetro.
Mhm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Gowan?
Yes.
Okay, aye. So those are 4. Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 12, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-047 to appoint or reappoint 3 members to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board Committee, Parks Department.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Commission. We do have 1 reappointment eligible, Mr. Benjamin Delangel. Mirta Garza, who has served both terms, has expressed interest in reappointment as well, but that would be an exception. And then next slide. And here is the list of applicants. I believe we have 18.
Can we go?
You need.
So how many? Yeah,
you need
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We need 3 total.
Okay. Then,
How many want to be reappointed?
Benjamin Delano is interested in a reappointment. Mirta Garza also is, but she's not eligible due to the bylaws and ordinance. She has already served 2 terms.
okay.
Okay.
I would nominate
So a
Luis.
motion to-
I'm sorry, Commissioner. I would nominate Luis Rodriguez Abad.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those
I would like
opposed?
to
Motion passes.
reappoint Benjamin Delangel.
We have a motion to reappoint Benjamin
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I would like to reappoint Hector Buentello.
Quick question. I
He
want
wasn't
to,
on the list, Commissioner, for reappointment. We didn't even hear him. Is he one?
Did not apply, and our understanding is that he might be moving. So that is why he did not reapply.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Priscilla Noriega.
Good pick. We have a motion for Priscilla Noriega. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Is there one more?
No, that was it.
Oh, sorry.
Item 13, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-038 to appoint 6 members to the Brownsville Beautification Committee, Parks and Recreation Department.
So in order to be consistent with the appointments, we're seeking the 6 members. It can go up to 12 as a maximum. And Mr. Juan Rene Hernandez, Hiram Lozano, Amanda Dave, and Anissa Ramirez are all seeking reappointment, and they are eligible. Mr. Oscar Zatuche is also seeking reappointment. However, he has served both of his terms. He did submit a letter to the commission, so for your consideration. And so that we need 6 in total.
Are we allowed to reappoint Mr. Zartuche or?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make the motion to reappoint.
We have a motion to reappoint Oscar Zatuche in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
I would like,
Motion passes. Commissioner Gowan, go ahead.
I would like to move to reappoint Amanda Dave.
We have a motion to reappoint Amanda Dave. I'll second that. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Is
there a list
of?
Motion
Can
passes.
we,
Yes.
no.
I'll move to appoint Elizabeth Scholl.
Second?
We have a motion and a second for Elizabeth Scholl. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Mayor, I took your appointment. You might want to pick somebody from District 2.
I didn't even know you nominated anybody.
I did, the
Oh,
first
that's
one.
right, Oscar, yeah. No, that's fine.
3 more.
This is kind of hard to keep track of, so.
For the Brownsville Beautification Committee.
Repeat that, please.
Sorry, Norma Rodriguez, I think she submitted her application yesterday or the day before.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for Norma Rodriguez. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Is there any more? Oh, go ahead.
That's 4.
More.
I would make a motion to appoint Anissa Ramirez.
Oh, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes.
I'd like to appoint Mary Holman.
We have a motion for Mary Holman and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. That's 6.
That's 6. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel really good about these appointments.
I feel good that you feel good, Commissioner. Thank you.
Today was a bad day for me. I'm glad you all made me feel good.
We're not done yet. We still have 2.
Uh-oh.
Contain your excitement for 2 more action items.
Okay.
Item 14, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-039 to appoint or reappoint members to the Brownsville Border Film Commission, Communications and Marketing Department.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Commission. I'm Maria Rentrup, the Brownsville Border Film Commission Officer, and beside me I have Ms. Monica Tellum, CVB Manager. We're here seeking appointments for the Brownsville Border Film Commission. We currently have 7 vacancies. As you can see on the screen, we have the applicants listed, and of these applicants, Mr. Jesus Trevino is seeking reappointment. He has served 1 term. As for the bylaws, there is 1 appointment per commissioner and 1 per mayor. I'm here to answer any questions should there be.
So the other 6 then did not apply for reappointment?
No, sir, they're continuing their careers in the film industry, and as per bylaws, it is a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Are these the only applications on file? Because I thought there was a Michelle Garcia who had applied also from District 4.
Application.
We did receive some today. Let me look real quick.
But either way, we can just appoint somebody, right? And then they can fill their application out afterwards.
We had a Daniel Elkin for the Film Commission and, April Flores, yeah. and
I called two people for this, but both of them said conflict of interest, which was Henry and,
Mhm.
I don't remember that other name.
Well, I'll move to reappoint Jesus Trevino since he lives in District 3. Is my pick.
We have a motion to reappoint Jesus Trevino. Do we have a second?
Second.
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 We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Move to appoint Celia Galindo.
I'll second. Well, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Mayor, I'm going to ask that my spot be held because I really want to look for somebody good for this.
Okay. Fine.
Just give me till the next meeting.
Sure.
I'll call in Alice for District 1.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second for Colin Ellis. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
I would like to hold my pick as well, please.
Okay. I'll do the same because I was going to nominate Mr. Ellis. So, Commissioner Cowan?
Yeah, I'll wait for the next meeting as well.
Okay. Is that everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, and let's find good people so we can get a real good movie out of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Item 15, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-045 to appoint one member of the commission to the Brownsville Animal Regulation and Care Advisory Committee, Public Health Department.
Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. This item is to replace Mr. Joel Munguia, who was previously appointed by Commissioner Tetro.
Okay. Commissioner Munguia was our commission appointment. Is there anybody on the commission that has any interest in serving on this board? I think that
Commissioner Tetru is an animal lover.
Yes, I love the shelter. I would love to.
I'll nominate Commissioner Tetru.
Thank you, Commissioner De Los Santos. I promise I will not let you down.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. I see that the veterinarian spot is vacant. Is that going to be filled?
So we're currently doing two things, Mayor. One is we've been looking for a veterinarian position internal, but in the past, the commission has both used an internal veterinarian as one of our staff and then had a community veterinarian as well. So I would defer to legal whether there is a statutory requirement that they be an employee, but we do work off a statutory requirement as who the positions have to be. And this is one that just basically states we need one licensed veterinarian.
Okay. And this chart shows that everybody was appointed by Commissioner Tetro, but I don't think that's the case.
No, it was a state appointment.
No, I think it was.
Because, okay, all right.
Thank you.
And let me express also to staff on this. I know this is, I attended the last meeting of this committee, and it seems like they've had some trouble meeting quorum and moving forward. So I'd ask, and of course this isn't binding, but I'd ask staff to keep us apprised at least monthly for a while on participation of the board members, because if quorum is an issue and we need to start replacing people, we can do that because we need a functioning board. This is too important for the city.
And I'm also gonna say that unfortunately, Tessie Sarmiento, who was a fantastic member of the animal community, passed within the past few weeks. So at some point, we're gonna need to find somebody to take her spot, so probably want to put that on the next agenda.
That is correct, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, and we do intend to have that on the next commission agenda. There will also be just to share with the group, we are also working to look at the term of 2 years because that's what's on the bylaws and in the policy. So we will be coming back. We've been meeting with legal so that the city ordinance matches the policy that's set forth by the city.
And Art, let's also look at, I see right now it's 5 citizens. We may want to look at adjusting that so that every commissioner has a pick.
Certainly, sir. We'll look at that.
Thank you.
It's 7. Oh, okay.
5 plus 2.
It should, okay.
Because there's a vet, there's a city commissioner, there's an animal welfare organization, the city health authority. So there's only 5 citizens that we appoint.
Okay. All right.
All right, our next item is executive session, and I'll read the items. Item 1, closed session pursuant to section 551.087, subsection 1, Texas Government Code regarding commercial or financial information that the city of Brownsville has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city, and with which the city is conducting economic development negotiations, and to deliberate financial or other incentives to the same regarding Project Shield, City Manager's Office. Item 2, closed session pursuant to section 551.087, subsection 1, Texas Government Code regarding commercial or financial information that the city of Brownsville has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city, and with which the city is conducting economic development negotiations, and to deliberate financial or other incentives to the same regarding Project Discovery, City Manager's Office.
We have a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, we'll see you in executive session. Just remember it's a separate link and it was emailed to us earlier. Thanks.
It is 7:52 p.m. and the city commission will now go into executive session. And we're coming back in for reconvening in open session. The next item was possible action on any items as discussed in executive session. And I believe y'all said there would be no action that needed to be taken.
That's correct. There's no action from executive session. So the next item is adjournment. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned. Everybody have a good night. Thank you.
It is now 8:23 PM. There being no further business to come before the city commission, we have adjourned.